Joining us now from Philadelphia, Republican Congressman Charlie Dent. Congressman, good to see you this morning. You pretty quickly, in real time, immediately on Saturday, actually condemned what you were seeing through the streets of Charlottesville with Nazis, with the KKK, and with other members of the white supremacist groups. The president came out yesterday and did make a clear statement of condemnation specifically to those groups, but it came a few days after yours and others. What do you make of the way he handled the last 3 days?
Well, Willie, thanks for having me on the program. I guess what I would say is that the initial response clearly was inadequate, and it was a failed response. And then he came out yesterday with a better response, but it looked a little bit forced and half-hearted. And I think what's affecting the president here is the fact that his prior statements during the campaign, where, he went after, where he had made some attacks on Mexicans, Muslims, the Indiana judge. And I think, it makes these situations even more treacherous for the president. And I'll tell you, I was a bit miffed yesterday when he attacked Ken Frazier. I know Ken. He's from Philadelphia. His father was a janitor. He went to Penn State. I went to Penn State. He's a few years ahead of me. I've met with him many times. He's a friend. They're doing great work there at Merck on cancer drugs like melanoma, and I just thought it was kind of a cheap shot. Other CEOs stepped off that council, too. He didn't attack them. They weren't African-American either. So I thought, that he didn't handle that well at all, and so I was that really did bother me quite a bit. So, and by the way, as we're talking about this, and we have some big issues to deal with, and I just heard what you said about the tweets. Again, we're tweeting about CNN again and other things that, really are distracting us from doing the important work of the country.
Well, you led me to my next question there, because there is a lot on the table that you and others on Capitol Hill are trying to get done for the country. And the sun has been blotted out almost entirely by the stories about Russia and Charlottesville, most of them of the president's own manufacturing. How frustrating is it to you as a Republican or just as a lawmaker on Capitol Hill trying to get things done when all the attention goes to something that Donald Trump said or did that he didn't need to say or do?
Well, of course it's frustrating. I serve on the Appropriations Committee. I'm a senior appropriator. We've got to make sure this government is properly funded. We've got to deal with the debt ceiling issue, budget issues. Of course, we want to pivot to tax reform and infrastructure. And I'm trying to deal with these serious matters, as we all are. September is going to be a very difficult month in Washington. Yeah. And we've got to be firing on all cylinders to get this work done, and we have to work collaboratively with the administration, to achieve some of these very important basic functions of governance. So that's where I'm focused now, and to the extent that we're dealing with all these other issues or mishandling these other serious issues like in Charlottesville, I think it's very problematic.
Congressman Hallie Jackson here. September is going to be insane. There's so much happening in that month that it is almost tough to wrap your head around it. And I have two questions for you regarding your role in Congress. One of the things that I have been hearing from folks inside and close to the White House is about how they've learned the lessons from health care when it comes to tax reform, which is something that they want to get done, regarding outreach to outside groups, regarding trying to make sure that lawmakers are buying into the plan. So in your personal experience, have you been approached about the plan for tax reform? Do you think that the administration is handling that strategy properly?
Well, I think we need to back up a little bit on tax reform. We first must pass what are called reconciliation instructions. Not what the White House wants to do. For their full steam ahead. They're certainly not backing up. Yeah, but I'll tell you what, Hallie, what I think in the House, we've got to figure out what we want to do, which is I think we need to pass reconciliation instructions on tax reform. There are a lot of folks who want to put in, hundreds of billions of dollars of changes in mandatory programs. And I think that's a good debate to have, but I would not have that debate while we're doing tax reform. The reason I say that is because, you'll give off the impression that we're going to be cutting taxes for businesses while, removing people from food stamps. And that's a lesson I don't think a lot of people learned from the health care debate, that when we're removing taxes from the Obamacare taxes on higher income people and removing people from, say, Medicaid, that's not a very good optic, to put it mildly. And
I'm sorry, Congressman, go ahead.
So that was my point. So that's a lesson that I think we need to learn. So I think we have to focus the reconciliation instructions on tax reform, get a responsible top-line spending number, and then move forward on tax reform. I think we should save the mandatory changes for another day, just because of the optical situation that will be created.
When it comes to another fight that's going to be happening, it's over the border wall and funding for the border wall. Is that going to get in the budget?
Oh, I suspect there might be some additional money for establishing operational control of the border. I don't think it's going to be a huge amount of money. I think the bill that was passed just a few weeks ago had about $1.6 billion to help implement part of the Secure Fence Act that I voted for back in 2006, I believe. So I think that there will probably be some border funding. But that's going to be something that will be negotiated with the Senate at the proper time. The Senate Democrats are going to have a say in this because we're going to need 60 votes, to fund the government, obviously. So I think a lot of this is going to depend on how the Senate feels on that matter.
Congressman Noah Rothman has a question for you.
Congressman, in McClatchy this morning, there is a story populated with quotes by state-level Republican officials expressing frustration with Republicans who took issue with Donald Trump's statement on Saturday, saying they're posturing essentially for the benefit of the Beltway. Do you think that these people have a point, or are they indulging and enabling the president's worst instincts?
Well, look, anybody who watched what happened on Saturday, we saw what happened. These were white nationalists, Klansman types, neo-Nazis, whoever they were. They were itching for a fight. They came there with body armor. They had pepper spray. They had batons, helmets. I've seen a lot of demonstrations over the years. Most of the people who show up, these don't show up armed like that. And so this is a bad bunch of people. It had to be condemned. I was doing a lot of things on Saturday. I had various engagements, and I was just appalled just what little I saw of it on that day. It was just appalling, and we had to condemn it. And I don't think anybody's trying to play politics here. I wish the whole situation never had happened. None of us would have. It was ugly. But we have to deal with the situations as they arise.
Does this change the way you feel about President Trump, the way he handled Charlottesville?
Look, as I said earlier, during the campaign he made some incendiary statements on Mexicans. The judge from Indiana, he mishandled the David Duke debacle. There were those types of situations, Muslims too. He made all these comments, and I think that has made it much more difficult for the president, to deal with these kinds of situations like the one that occurred in Charlottesville the other day. So I think that's the reality of the situation. Look, I want to work with the administration. I have to oversee the VA funding. So I work closely with Secretary Shulkin. I want to work with these folks for the good of the country. I want everybody to succeed here. But these types of incidents obviously make it harder for us all to, to get along.
Congressman Charlie Dent of Pennsylvania, appreciate you taking some time with us this morning. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Willie.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.